Okay, so today we are going to be talking about the books that I DNF'd or did not finish this season. Basically the books that I started and then I stopped. So some of them are accidental DNFs, some of them are temporary DNFs, some of them are permanent DNFs. Let's talk about it. The first book was an accidental DNF. It was Guards. I was halfway through it. I was enjoying it. It's not really my style. I don't think that, what's it called? Absurdism. I think that's what it's called. Absurdism. I don't think it's my genre. I've tried a couple, not very many. So who knows? Maybe I will like it someday, but I don't think it's really my genre. So I was enjoying it, but I wasn't loving it. And then I took a break from it because I needed to read something else. I guess it must have been a buddy read. I don't know. And then I forgot and I never came back to it. I still plan to finish it at some point. I just don't know when. Not a very exciting DNF to kick off the video. The next book that I DNF'd was An Interview with a Vampire. So this is a bind up of the first three, but I did not finish this book. And so I went on a little vampire kick for I don't know, a couple of months where I just was really looking for some dark, gritty vampires, following more the lore and the mythology. I quickly learned after trying a couple of different vampire stories, and I think I DNF'd them all, or at least rated, I don't remember. I learned very quickly that this is not mythology that I'm interested in. Interview with a Vampire. I love how environmental, how immersive the book was. I found the general thread of it relatively interesting. I didn't enjoy following our main character because he was very passive, which a passive main character isn't inherently wrong. Sometimes it serves a great purpose for the story and I very much enjoy it. But in this case, I didn't like it. It made our main character just seem like he just went with what everybody else was doing and not in a purposeful way for the story. I didn't care for the way his character was done, which is fine. That's not enough to make me quit a book. The reason I quit this book is because, especially in this book, not in all vampire books, but especially in this book, the act of bloodletting, the act of sucking someone's blood, was a very erotic act. It was described in very sensual ways. And it's something that is taken from people without their consent. So it's very, very rapey. And I did not enjoy reading that she really honed in on describing it very thoroughly. I didn't enjoy reading that act over and over and over again. I'm fine with reading it here and there, but it was a constant in this book because it's a major theme. It's understandable. But it's not easy to read, and I don't like reading it. I did not enjoy it. And after so long, I started to just get really down while I was reading this book. I had to take long breaks. I'd read it for a little bit. I'd stop. I'd read something else. Read a little bit. Stop. Read something else. And eventually I was like, why am I making myself finish this? I really don't think it had any distinct flaws to it. There's nothing that I can say about this book that I say this book is terrible, because it served its purpose. It's meant to be disturbing. It's not meant to be romanticized. I just didn't like reading it, especially because there was also a large focus on children in this book, and I didn't like reading it. So it was just more of like, it's meant to be dark and disturbing, and it was a kind of dark and disturbing that I don't enjoy. So I quit for the sake of my sanity. Next book in this list is Shadow Divers. This is a nonfiction, and it's about these divers, these men who are really obsessed with deep sea diving, and they end up coming across this impossible shipwreck. And when they report it, when they let people know that they tell them this doesn't it can't happen. We don't have a missing ship like this, and it can't be done. But also the wreck itself is very odd in the way it's been preserved. So these divers, this true story, these divers are exploring it. And I loved the beginning of this book, especially because it spent so much time talking about deep sea diving itself. Diving is something that has always interested me. I am very interested in deep sea diving. I don't ever want to do it, but I loved experiencing it secondhand this way. And I really enjoyed the beginning of this book, but then it kind of hit a lull for me where I don't really care so much about these divers' familial relationships, and I don't really care so much about some of the things that became more of a focus. And so I kind of just lost interest. I put it down for a bit. I went over to something else, and I never came back to it. But I am very much in the mood for it, and I've been thinking about picking it up again recently, so I will probably finish it soon. It was just I'm not digging this at the moment. Let's move on to something else and come back. Not a very exciting DNF. Next book on the list is The Boyfriend Project. So generally, when I stop reading a book, I at least give it to the halfway point. Guards, I was almost halfway with An Interview with a Vampire. I think I had like a quarter of the book left when I finally quit it. Shadow Divers, I got halfway through before I put it down for a bit. The Boyfriend Project, I think I only got 50 pages in. So this writing style, I tend to be kind of picky about my prose. I really love thoughtful prose. They don't have to be beautiful. They don't need to be elaborate. They don't need to be extensive, just thoughtful. And this author, her writing style isn't great. I feel really bad saying that, but it's true. If it's something you're picky about, it's something that really notice in this one. A lot of the dialogue was very cheesy, very, I don't know, it almost came off like one of those, like a soap opera. It kind of came off just like as very elaborate, very big. And even the inciting incident, the thing that kicked off the book, was just so over the top and cheesy and dramatic, and the lines just seemed so unnatural. But there were things that I actually really enjoyed about the book. I think I might have gotten more than 50 pages. I think I might have gotten 100 pages into it before I quit it, because there were so many things that I was enjoying. The main character she had these friends that I loved their dynamics. I loved these three women that had this pact and this bond. The premise of the story is that these three women find out that this guy that they're casually dating was dating other people as well, and they got bothered about it. They made a big scene, and then they stormed off together and then became best friends, and they decided to make a boyfriend pact where they're not going to date anyone for a year, and they're just going to focus on their solo projects, on their dreams, on their careers, on themselves, and, introduce the hot new guy that kind of disrupts our main character's plans. I loved the friend group. I was so interested in our main character's career, and I loved what she was doing. I loved learning about her ambitions and watching these girls follow their ambitions. Then when the romance started, it was very, very fast, like ridiculously fast. There was a lot of chemistry happening off page, and we were just getting the big moments of like being obsessed with each other on page with none of the buildup at all, which I really, if I'm going to be sold on a romance, I'm going to need to actually, see the romance. And then once the romance started picking up, I realized I'm not enjoying this part of it. I'm enjoying all the other parts of it. So if these things are going to fade and this thing is going to become the forefront, I'm not going to like this book. So I just quit it. Next book I didn't finish was Promise of Blood. Ooh, okay, so this book I didn't know a lot about it going in, and it wasn't for me. I wasn't really that into what was going on. There's main mystery that's happening at the center of the story. Sometimes I found the mystery interesting, sometimes I couldn't care less about it. The characters were fairly interesting. I was pretty into the characters, but not enough to carry the whole story for me. And the magic system, wow, I didn't like this magic system. It all boils down to snorting gunpowder. I don't know, the whole magic system is around snorting gunpowder, and I don't care about that. I couldn't care less about that magic system. So it was just a case of, I'm not digging this. I'm not digging these elements. The characters are interesting. Everything else I don't care that much about. So it wasn't for me. I gave up on it fairly early on. I think I was listening to the audiobook for this one, so I don't know how deep into it I was. I got about a quarter of the way through. Last book I didn't finish this season was Kings of the Wild, and it's a temporary DNF. This is about a band of mercenaries who used to be hot stuff and they're all washed up. And when there is a damsel in distress that they need to all go save, they come back together and they go to save her. But they're all washed up, so it's not easy for them. This book is funny, and the humor stays consistent. I got halfway through it. The humor stays consistent for the first half the whole time. It made me laugh several times. The relationship dynamics between the men is great. There were things that I didn't like about it. There are a ton of band references and music references throughout it. And if you're into that kind of thing, I could see why it would only make it better. For me, that just draws me out of the story. I typically don't like a lot of media references or references of the real world at all. In any kind of book, including contemporaries and literary fictions, it just draws me out. It makes me feel like the author's trying too hard, which I don't think he necessarily was. It was just that I just wasn't digging what he was doing. This book is basically a D&D campaign, which on paper sounds really good, but it ends up, it's just such a, it's such a light-hearted, fun adventure, which is not what I went into this thinking I was getting. A band of mercenaries getting back together to save someone with this cover. I thought I was getting something a lot more gritty than what I got. So I went into this with very much the wrong headspace. There are some very distinct things other than what I just described that I didn't like, some stuff that genuinely irritated me that I just don't really feel like getting into. But overall, it was still a fun book to read, you know what I mean? So it's more of a temporary DNF. Typically, when I read fantasy, I'm not looking for a lighthearted adventure. When I read fantasy, I'm looking for an epic or for something gritty. I typically don't want this. So this isn't really my style of fantasy, but every now and then I get in a mood where a lighthearted adventure sounds fun. So I am not giving this one to the library, and I will likely come back to it eventually, but it's not something that's high on my priority list, and we'll just have to wait until I get into this kind of a mood, which isn't often, so I'll come back to it eventually. I assume that, it's such a fast read, it would have been a really easy book for me to push through. I just wasn't really feeling it, so I didn't want to. I assume that this is going to be a book that I'm going to come out of saying, that was fun. I had a good time. What a fun book. But it's not going to be a book that's going to be groundbreaking for me. So there you go. Those are the books that I DNF'd or did not finish in the season of summer. I'd love to chat with you more about these books if you want to try to convince me to pick up certain ones, or if you want to just chat with me about how you felt about them when you finished them. What books did you quit on this season? I post videos every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.